Hello everyone and welcome to the third video of the SSX Community Poll, ranking the best and worst tracks in the games. All opinions were collected anonymously and the Google Forms were promoted in the SSX Discord and posted on Reddit, and as always, the goal with the forums were to gather as many opinions as possible. And this time we're back with SSX Free, which has the subcategories of race and slopestyle. In total, 23 people voted for SSX Free. To rank the tracks, the same point system was used as in the other videos, meaning 3 points for first place, 2 points for second place, and 1 point for third place. And for the worst track, negative numbers were used instead, meaning -3 points for the worst track and -2 points for the second worst track. In the slopestyle category, the best track got 2 points and the second best track got 1 point, and the same then goes for the worst track, but with negative numbers as always. And just like last time, I did give priority to the lengthier comments, meaning someone who ranked the best track as the third best might be featured. And once again, the disclaimer is that I did vote in all the polls, but my opinions are not included in the video. If you're curious, you can check it out in the description. And if you missed the other two videos on SSX OG and SSX Tricky, you can also find a playlist on my channel. And then, of course, once all the videos are done, I'm gonna be making a spreadsheet with all the answers and calculations made public, so that way you can read all the comments that did not make it into the video. We're gonna be starting out with the third worst track of SSX Free in the race category, which ended up with -22 points, and the track was Intimidator. And here's what some people had to say about Intimidator. Extreme dislike for the big jump gaps and the falling on trees near the end. Although the race opens up towards the end and allows different routes, it does not make up for the dumb trees. I'm just not a fan of the track's layout. Lots of harping turns and weird gimmicks and obstacles. I hate Intim. There is basically a single path for most of the track, and all it does is kind of loop back and forth. Not very interesting. I like the village aesthetic it has in the middle, but that doesn't make up for it being bad. Too centered around gaps, ends up with a lack of shortcuts and interesting diversions. The few shortcuts you do have are below average. A frustrating race where you're likely to fuck up getting super uber at just the worst spots. Also, falling before the gap jumps potentially means you'll spawn back at the side you started from, causing big time losses. Stormy Forest is an okay concept, but only really has 2 viable routes. And if you know how to play the game, you'll skip 95% of their length anyways and just blast through the middle. Moving on to the second worst racetrack in SSX Free, at -34 points, we find Ruthless. Rocks, wind, and scuffed log rails. The flat environment, apart from some drops without a proper jump, and the sheer amount of deep snow make it a slopestyle nightmare. Racing is okay, but the platinum time is pathetic and not really challenging. If you bail in either of the event types, say goodbye to your speed for a while. It's just there. Snowflakes off and off in some weird hidey hole. It's knockoff prone, still hard to ride, also has wind when no other track does. Ruthless tends to have a lot of the same issues with Throne, but not as heavily as Throne. It has its gimmicks with the wind section, falling rocks and shortcuts. The layout is probably the most confusing in the entire game, and feels a bit all over the place. The aesthetics are very bland and it feels overly dark and grim. The line variety is decent, but some parts of the track suffer from there being no variety at all. Strange pacing throughout. Starts quick, gets slow, and stays slow. Carried by interesting multiple paths and a fairly unique main path. End section is good. And now we have arrived at the worst racetrack of SSX Free. With -36 points, we find the Throne. It may be the most gnarly backcountry, but it's old and boring to me. I've seen it too much. It's weirdly difficult and often just not fun. The color palette is blah and often I get stuck in the throne when I try to get a good all-peak race. Throne just feels a bit excessive, not in a good way. It feels that the level suffers from trying to be the boss level too much. The track is not supposed to be easy by any means, and it's not, but it's a bit much compared to Gratitude. The track also feels bland compared to the other Peak 3 or other racing tracks even in general. They should have taken the top of the mountain a little more extreme. There's bigger drops on regular tracks. Solid track but unexceptional. Supposed to be a challenging environment, but doesn't really accomplish this. Fun to play but feels somewhat forgettable and a bit one track. Mostly just a shore. And now we move on to the best race tracks of SSX Free. Starting with the third best track with 21 points, we find Snowdream. Best vibes. Stunning introduction to the SSX World Circuit with a little twist. It's a really good and accessible track for starting players, but can also be technical when trying to get a PB time. Gives you lots of opportunities for different tech like slides and reset warps, and also has nice freeride spaces. I mean, it's nothing special, but a stereotypical sunny snowboard track will always be a hit in my book. Not to mention solid array of big challenges. A good introductory track that's really fun to play no matter how fast or how slow you ride. Such a good and fun beginner track. And now we move on to the second best racetrack of SSX Free. With 34 points, we find Ruthless Ridge. Ruthless Ridge is a very nice track with multiple paths to go down at all times. The track features great variety in side paths, nice jumps, some tricky shortcut lines for the more advanced players, and an all-around interesting core layout. The track is also visually very pleasing to the eye with the color palette the track uses, although this is subjective to my personal opinion. The sunrise gives it an awesome vibe. You can either go fast with little air or get huge air several times. The routes can be mixed and there's a lot of room for improvised lines in freeride. I love its look, its feel, it's an awesome course. Nice color palette change from the rest of the game. Easy to learn, hard to master track. Neat routing, insane TAS potential. Big air is everywhere here, along with Metro. There are just so many routes to take and explore. And now we have arrived at the best track of SSX Free. With 36 points, we find Metro City! Great, we couldn't get Mercury City to be the top again, so I guess we just have Metro now. There's something about these city levels now, isn't there? Anyways, move on to the opinions, shall we? Metro always fascinated me when I was a kid, and still today because of all the different paths there are to take. There's a hidden subway shortcut that I discovered on my own one day, and it blew my mind. It's also the very last racetrack in the game, the bottom of the mountain. So many twists, turns and shortcuts. The bright lights of the city, this track is just a lot of fun for beginners and advanced players. The layout of this question is bugged. There's other options than Metro City when there shouldn't be. This race has many different paths you can take, much complexity in the design. Metro City is the SSX Free version of Mercury City from SSX 2000 and SSX Tricky, and fan favorite from the two previous games. It brings back the city aesthetic, what looks good in this game, and the routes going between buildings, some great grind lines, and overall solid pacing works out greatly for new players with some friendlier lines, and for more experienced players there's some hard routes. And the phone booth teleports are a nice homage to the UFO Easter egg seen in Tricky. What is quite a nice touch. The track feels a bit cluttered and claustrophobic at times, what is the reason why it's ranked below Ruthless Ridge. And now we're gonna move on to the best two and worst two slopestyle tracks of SSX Free. And we're gonna start off with the second worst slopestyle track. With minus 33 points, we find the Throne. Throne is tough to get a really good trick score. It's easy to mess up in lots of places. Plus, it's also my least favorite racing track as well. Color palette is bleh and I see the map too often. I think this track just isn't as good as a freestyle track. No really astounding opportunities to score some points in my opinion. It's still alright though. The track suffers too hard from trying to be a boss level. It's too complicated, the trick lines are just not good, and there's not enough variety. The track is also very linear, with only a single path being viable for any type of trick doing most of the time. What really hurts the level in freestyle. The fact that the backcountry meta is also literally just half-piping for multiple minutes and then semi-racing down to the rest of the track is just twisting the knife in the wound. I wouldn't rank it as a bad freestyle course, but I think it has more potential in freeride. Happiness and Kicked Out are better for freestyle, but that doesn't make the Throne bad at all. And the worst slopestyle track with minus 41 points is Ruthless. Ruthless. No. Bad. Shitty level for freestyle, no good jumps, no speed, annoying to keep your combo amidst all the rocks. Great start, let down by the same strange pacing, missing opportunities for big jumps through the whole middle of the track. Most alternate paths are also not viable for freestyle. I would pick Throne alternatively. It's not that it's bad, but I'd rather backcountry challenges take place in slopestyle too, but then again it would be like single event slopestyle, but I'm not sure if I could tell if the AI rival would be dumb enough as the single event one there. Bad memories on this track, the wind just pushes you on the rocks in some instances, and it's a mess to get a decent combo. And now we have arrived at the second best slopestyle track in SSX Free. At 47 points, we find R&B. Flow, flow, flow. Such a nice track to ride and has lots of different routes options which are viable for the platinum medal. Great mix of extremely modified and natural terrain. You can also blast through the course with super high speed using the rail lines that carry you almost all the way through the track. R&B is a fun beginner slopestyle event and it's challenging because it's not incredibly easy to get a platinum medal. The big multipliers provide plenty of challenge even to a seasoned player. Plus, I'm always a fan of the sunny day, white snow atmosphere that the top half of Peak 1 has. Feels like a very solid show-off event for Peak 1. It's pretty simple, although it has a lot of rocks at certain parts for a Peak 1 event, what might make some jumps hard to land. The event has multiple routes and a lot of ways to go down the course. The aesthetic is also very nice and bright, fitting for a Peak 1 event. The track overall flow is also decently well made and the track feels like there's not much of a dull moment. This track can be tricky, but all of the big multipliers are still relatively easy to get. The layout is a little bad in the area before the logging camp and it's easy to lose combos here, but it's still great. And now for the best slopestyle track with 50 points, we find Style Mile. Style Mile is really cool. It features beautiful architecture. It was never too difficult to get a high score in slopestyle event. And I like that it has bright green rails to contrast the blue-gray atmosphere of the track. Easily the best show-off track in the entire game. The track has a nice flow to it, it has different paths you can take. The course overall doesn't suffer too much from boring parts, and it manages to keep up with a variety of different sections all the way to the finish line. A hard choice between R&B and this, but what made me rank R&B higher than this is how boring the ending is. All the big jumps and show-off material was used up at the top half of the track. From session 6 onwards, it's quite flat and you have to make your own fun. Incredible pacing with a good balance of speed and control. Interesting and challenging multiplier locations. Different paths are viable for different playstyles. Also interesting scenery. And now we have arrived at the bonus section for SSX Free. In the poll we had 3 different bonus questions and we're gonna start off with the best station. And once again the ties are back, so both of these stations got 7 points. And we're gonna start with green station. This is a tough battle between green and yellow station, but I'm voting for green station because the layout is the best one of all the stations. The visuals are also decent but not the best. Yellow station has my favorite aesthetic. If we had an ideal station, it would be green station layout and yellow station colors. Rails everywhere enables fast travel. Paths to the actual tracks themselves are also solid. And the other tied station was blue station. This is how I live, countryside with the big city very close. It'd be cool to go down in for the night after a long day of boarding to warm up in a cozy lodge at the night. Love the vibes. And now we move on to the best big air event, and with 12 points we have Much Too Much. Much Too Much isn't the biggest big air event there is. Sure, it has some annoying gimmicks and the ambience isn't as nice as it is at Peak 1 and Peak 2, but it's so rewarding to ride the top route all the way to the end and score that 9-second jump. Lightning or thunder, whatever, it's pretty wild. It's funny that DJ Atomica start talking about how the designers really don't like the competitors for the track lol. Or was it kicked out? Imagine if Survive It was really based on that concept. And for the final bonus question, we find the best super pipe. And with 10 points, we have the Junction. They're all equally good on the gameplay level design, but Perpendicular slows down my PC and Schizophrenia doesn't have the city setting, which is a big reason I like the Junction. Junction is the coolest looking with hard big challenges. Schizo is boring with terrible flakes. Perp has nightmare flakes. And those were the opinions on the SSX Free poll. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to stick around for the next poll. See you then. Peace out.